Hi, Sandy, and today I'm bringing you my August wrap up. In the month of August, I was taking part in the Magical Readathon, and I did in fact manage to hit all of the prompts for my career. Can't remember what it was. I do have a list of the prompts somewhere, but I'm not going through that in this. This is just going to be a rundown of the books that I read. I did read far more than I anticipated, so I'm going to jump right in because I have an appointment that I need to leave for in like half an hour, so I don't have the time to waffle. First thing I read, which is a fairly strange thing to read in August, is this, which is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. No, 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. I cannot ever get his title right. This doesn't work. This is a collection of his diaries from the time he was a junior doctor in the NHS and the Christmases and New Year's that he worked. And it's really just shedding a light on the kind of nonsense that they have to go through. I say nonsense, it's just, I can't think of a better word, but it's actually, this is very harrowing and blunt and brutal and quite upsetting for some things, especially since he was in OBGYN. So he was doing like labour and delivery, and usually labour and delivery that was difficult ended in, not so great outcomes. Or great outcomes. Like, he got more wins than he did losses, but still. Next up is the next Emily Lindsay Sands reread, and that is The Ladies of Amp. This follows Jean-Louise, who is the sister of Thomas, if you've been paying attention to my reread, and it is her meeting her life mate, obviously. One small hitch, he kidnaps her, and they don't start off on the best foot, but he has a good reason for kidnapping her, and it all works out in the end, because of course it does. Next up, I read the final book in the Helen Huang companion series, and this was also part of a read-along that I was taking part in. This is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This follows Quan and Anna. Quan we know from the previous books as the cousin and brother of the two characters respectively, and he has just gone through something massive. He's had cancer and he's sort of recovering from that mentally. Like, he's done all his chemo, he's in remission, physically he's healed, mentally he's not quite all the way there yet, and he is struggling with that because of the fact that he is a man and that he is Asian, and quite often these cultures don't lend very well to men showing weakness. This is the opinion of the book, not my opinion. I'm not in that culture, so it's not for me to say, but that is how Quan feels about this. And he meets Anna, who is a very famous musician. She went viral on YouTube, and she is now kind of stuck in a rut. She also has undiagnosed autism, which is a theme within these books, and she is struggling with that and struggling with her family and the expectations that are on her. And it's just like, this book is probably the hardest hitting of all of them, and I don't even understand why people say this is their least favourite, because I really, really love this book. If I had to choose my least favourite, it would be the second one. So it'd be like the first one, this one, the second one is kind of how I'd rank it. Because I love Michael. I just love Michael. But I was so glad to get Colin's book, and the conversations that were had in here were incredible, especially for the size of book that it was. It felt heavy, it was difficult at times, but I absolutely loved it. Next up, I read the final kind of books in the Schwab-along, and that was City of Ghosts, Tunnel of Bones and Bridge of Souls, all by V.E. Schwab. There they are. These are known as the Cassie Blake series because our main character is Cassie Blake, and Cassie Blake had a near-death experience and now she can see ghosts, and that is kind of both lucky and not so lucky, as her parents are paranormal investigators. Her dad is more on the historian side, I believe, and her mum is more on the sort of TV side of it. I can't remember, I read these right at the start of the month. So basically this follows Cassidy and her family as they film this ghost hunting show, and they go to Edinburgh, Paris and New Orleans. And I liked these, but I also was not the keenest on them. They're very much a good I think it's a good structure. I think it's a good bare bones of a story, but I feel like it needs to be fleshed out. Maybe that's because it's middle grade, and I do not tend to read middle grade. I don't tend to enjoy middle grade. I just feel like it doesn't dive deep enough, and like I say, it feels like a good bare bones story, but not enough meat on it for me. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and it's funny because I'm seeing a lot of similarities. I'm currently reading The Casket Girls. I've read the first one, just finished the second one, and the New Orleans story, there's so many crossovers because of obviously a lot of the mythos that goes around New Orleans, and it's just really fascinating to me. I did love the surroundings. That's one thing that Schwab does really, really well, is she puts you in that atmosphere fantastically well. I just think, for me, wasn't my favourite, but I think that's mainly because it was middle grade. Still really enjoyed it. It's still like 3-4 stars, but, you know, I've given Schwab 5 stars, so. Anyway, then just to kind of cleanse my brain a little bit, I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is the first time I've read the physical book, Rude. This is the first time I've read the physical book, and I kind of did like a buddy read with Becca, because Becca was also reading it at the same time, roughly. And this time I did annotate it. I didn't tab it because I didn't have tabs, but I did annotate it with like coloured pens, and I really, really enjoyed the process of annotating it. I would like to go through it actually and tab where I've like bits that I've annotated, and just make it a bit easier to, you know, find them. This is Ali Hazelwood's most sort of scientific romance that she's written. Again, it is one of her feminist novels, so this is about Elsie and Jack, and Elsie is a physicist and an adjunct professor, and she's not getting paid that much, and she has been offered an interview, like this extensive interview for a job, a tenured position at MIT, so of course she's jumping at the chance. Unfortunately, one of the guys there is Jack, and he is historically known for making a fool of theoretical physicists, which is what Elsie is. He is an experimental physicist, and there's like this like war going on between the two types of physicists, partially started by him when he was younger, and Elsie hates him. But as it also turns out, Elsie fake dates because her pay is not very good as an adjunct professor, so she is a fake girlfriend. She gets paid to go to events with people, to act like they as their girlfriend so that people don't ask questions. And there's only one client that she sees more than once, and it happens to be Jack's brother. So Jack is like, you said you were a librarian, not a physicist. Why are you lying to my brother? And of course his brother's away and he can't explain what's going on, and Elsie's like, I'm not going to tell him. Like, I'm not outing my client. Like, that's not happening. She likes his brother, so she's like, I'm not going to out him. Not out in like the LGBT sense, just out in like the telling his secret sort of sense. And it's basically, she's determined to get this job. He keeps telling her she's not going to get it. He's falling for her. She's falling for him. There's so much complex like relationship in this, and I just love it. And then there's a whole thing with her like boss professor person, and I hate him so much. But this is definitely my favourite of the 3 so far, and I look forward to whatever Ali Hazelwood does next. The next book I don't actually have because it is already out of the house and on hold, and that is Mina and the Slayers. I actually DNF'd this. It was just so, I couldn't get into it. I could not get into it. I don't know again if it is middle grade or if it reads like middle grade, but it's actually YA. Rude. But I just could not get into it. I read the first one and it was like, eh. And then I was reading the second ones and I was like, I know exactly where the story's going. Like, I can, this story doesn't need to be this big. I know where it's going. I know how we get from point A to point B, and everywhere in between. It's just, it's been done a million times and I didn't like it. Which is a shame because a lot of my friends love Mina and the Slayers. But one thing for me is set in a good atmosphere. That's why I love Schwab. Schwab is fantastic. It's set in a good atmosphere. That's why I love the Casket Girls. Fantastic. It's set in the atmosphere of New Orleans. And for some reason, Mina and the Slayers, Mina and the Undead, I could not. There was no atmosphere. There was no setting. I didn't know where. I knew I was in New Orleans, but that's all I knew. If I didn't know what New Orleans was like, I said to one of my friends who absolutely loves the series, I was like, okay, but tell me from that description in those books what New Orleans is like. And they were like, got me there because there's no setup for me. For me, it just did not work. But I know it's a, you know, people love it, so I'm sorry, it just was not my cup of tea. Next up, I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is one of those books that's gone kind of wild on TikTok, I think. But it's about a hockey player, the captain of a hockey team, and a figure skater who, so something happens and so there's 2 rinks at the school, at this university, and one of the rinks is damaged and it needs repaired, so they have to share the rink, and like the dancers blame the hockey players, and the hockey players are trying to make up for them even though it was nothing to do with them. And Nate and Anastasia just kind of end up getting to know each other. It's almost like a hate to love, because Anastasia really cannot stand him, but he's like a golden retriever cinnamon roll, and like you just can't resist him. I love this book. I love the level that it goes into with consent and with conversations, and like Nate being the one that's responsible. Like often you see like college age boys are not held to any sort of decent standard, and it's like, oh well, you know, hormones and drinking and girls wear such short skirts and all that nonsense. Nate is like, no, I'm not going to do anything until you tell me you want me to do it. Like, this is a smutty book, and the thing is, Nate needs explicit consent, and he makes that explicit consent sexy, because so many people think that consent is not sexy, that birth control, like condoms and things, not sexy, and Nate makes it sexy. And we stand Nate. We love Nate. I love this book. I love the characters, all the hockey guys and everything. It was just, I loved it so much. I listened to the audiobook and really quite enjoyed the audiobook as well, reading along with it. I'm definitely looking forward to reading anything else Hannah Grace puts out. Then again, I read another Lindsay Sands, which is Immortal Ever After. This is the next one, and this follows Valerie and Anders. Anders, again, we see in previous books, he is a very, very quiet man. What happened there? He's a very quiet man. He is known for grunting, not speaking, and he's a very private character, so getting to see sort of into his head in this is really, really fun. And Valerie, who is kidnapped and then rescued by Anders and put under his protection because she's his life mate, but she doesn't really trust the whole vampire thing. And it's just, these two, I love them so much. Like, Anders' backstory is unbelievably sad. I love the way he deals with it and the way he decides that he is going to protect people. And I love these books. We all know I love these books. Next up, I caught up on my Kate Moss with The Ghost Ship. I really, really enjoyed this. This was the best book in this trilogy. It just continued to get better every single book. And I'm so excited to meet Kate Moss this month in September, in a couple of weeks, and get my book signed. I'm going to be going with like a tote bag full of books because I have almost every book that Kate Moss has written. I will actually be probably getting rid of this copy, this edition, because part of the ticket price covers a copy of the book, and it's the independent one, so it's got the sprayed edges, and it will also be signed and dedicated, so I would probably end up getting rid of this edition. But I really, really enjoyed this. I love the characters, I love the representation, and how seamlessly she just slipped the representation in, because we have a trans character in this, we have LGBT relationships, and it's just, I love Kate Moss. Like, this just solidified for me that she is one of my favourite authors of all time, and I cannot even tell you enough. The book works in generations, the trilogy. So the first generation's Mina, who is Louise's grandmother, and then the next one is Marta, who is Louise's mother, and then this one is Louise. And Louise decides that she wants to be a captain, but it's not quite as simple because she's a woman, and it's, you know, way back when. And this book, to be fair, I kind of wish there was more to this book, but there's this, it starts off with this sort of mysterious element and ends with this mysterious element of what happened to Louise. Like, I really can't talk about this book without talking about spoilers, so I'm going to stop there. Next up, I read Glasgow Kiss by Sophie Gravia. This book, I don't know how I feel about this book, if I'm being honest. It is effectively like Scottish Bridget Jones, is how it's sort of explained. And yeah, It really is. So you've got Zara, who is training to be a nurse. She's 29, she's about to graduate, and she's also working at this aesthetics clinic. And she is chronically single and decides that she wants to find somebody. And in Bridget Jones fashion, it just continues to go wrong. Like, some of the things that happen in this are not for the weak. There was actually a point in this where I was like disgusted so much with what happened that I almost DNF'd it, but I pushed through. And this is just, it's really fun. Like, if you like Bridget Jones, you're gonna like this. I don't like Bridget Jones, so I didn't like it as much. I still really enjoyed it. I liked how real it was. I liked how it was one of those things where, like, nobody has that bad luck. Like, nobody has all these bad things happen to her, but it's coalesced into one person. And I love this. I love the friendships in this. I love the discussions that were had in this. I love the fact that she eventually was able to see her own worth. And I really enjoyed this. The next one I'm really excited to read. And it's great to have a Scottish author writing about Scottish people, and it seemed quite authentic, which you don't really get a lot with Scottish characters. So yeah, if you like Bridget Jones, if you like very much comedy of errors and can deal with some like disgusting body talk, I can't think of a delicate way to put what happens, but there's body fluids involved post like body, just yeah, if you can't deal with that, don't read it, because it is gross. It was gross to me, but also funny. I'm going to stop talking about it now. Then unfortunately we had a DNF, which was The Island by Victoria Hislop. This was actually recommended to me by my neighbour, and the concept sounds incredible, and the research nosedive that it sent me in, incredible. This is a story based on a leper colony in Greece, or off the coast of Greece, back during kind of it spans a lot of time, and it hits all my buzzwords. It's historical fiction based on like true events, split over 2 different times, where like they come together because the main character that you start with, her grandmother was on the leper colony, and so she's learning about what happened to her grandmother, visiting the colony, which is no longer occupied, it's just like there, and it is a real place. It is a real place. It really, like, not the people, but like it happened, like people were there, even during Nazi occupation, lepers were there, and the way they were treated and things like that, and it's fantastic for that. But I just could not mesh with the writing style. I just couldn't do it. I was like, again, I know where the story's going. I read this story despite the fact that you've put it against a backdrop that I've never seen before, and it just, I was like, come on, do something interesting. Like, yeah, just not for me. This is more of like a lit ficky type historical fiction, and it just unfortunately wasn't for me, so this will also be getting on hold. I'm very sad about that, because I really wanted to like it. Next up was one that I bought for the cover and was really unsure about, and that was People of Abandoned Character by Claire Whitfield. This is about a woman who, again, I think is a nurse. Yes, she's a nurse, trains as a nurse, and then ends up marrying a doctor and gets sacked for marrying the doctor. But he's rich, so it doesn't really matter. She can be kept. And things start to happen. She's in this house. It's very Rebecca-esque, where like the help don't really want her there, and they're like, the housekeeper's really weird with her and everything, which gets revealed why later on in the book. And she feels quite ill at ease. And it's also set in 1888 at the height of the Jack the Ripper murders. And through her being interested in these murders, and through her being sort of bored and at home alone, she starts to realise that her husband might be Jack the Ripper. And so she decides to look into it, but also knowing that, you know, if her husband finds out that she's trying to figure him out, she could end up as one of his victims. And it's so like atmospheric and terrifying, and like the whole time I was just like, oh my god, you're gonna end up dead, like he's gonna get you, like somebody's gonna get you. Like it was so harrowing. I loved it. I loved the mystery element of it. It never actually gets solved. It's just so like, I was hooked on this book. Like, this is a chunker, but I read this so fast because I was just absolutely hooked on what was going on, and the atmosphere, and the people that she meets, and the things that happen, and it's just so good. I'm so impressed with this book. The next thing I read was for a book tour, and that is The Secret Life of Sophonisba Anguissola, which, try and say that 10 times fast, I tell ya. Anyway, so yes, this is about, again, a real life woman who existed. She was a painter back when, back in the time of like Michelangelo and stuff. She was actually trained partially by Michelangelo, which, talk about claim to fame, but she's not very well known nowadays, and Melissa Muldoon, the author, decided to put a spotlight on her because she was an incredible woman who lived an incredible life. She painted for royalty and stayed in the court of the Spanish king at the time. She just had this amazing life, and the author decided to sort of do like a fictionalized version of her life. So she obviously integrated things that we don't actually know existed. She hit all the marks of like historically accurate, like this happened and this happened and this happened, but the getting there is what she sort of wove into the story, and I really enjoyed it. I did a video for the book tour, which is semi-incoherent, I think, because I had COVID at the time, but this book, I absolutely loved it. If you love sort of historical Regency, like that sort of thing, you'll really enjoy this. She writes the characters so well, and you're rooting for the character. You get to know these side characters really well as well. Like, everything's just so well done, and it's funny because it reminds me a lot sometimes of Kate Moss and the way she writes, and as we know, I love Kate Moss. I was just so impressed with this, and I believe it is available, so, you know, go ahead and read it for yourself. I also will leave my video link down below as well, where I reviewed it. Next up, I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I love Tessa Bailey. She's just one of my favourite romance authors of all time now, because I have never read a book of hers that I didn't love. I think there was one where I was like, okay, this is a bit weird, but yeah, My Colour Vacation, I was like, the heck, but even that made me cry. So this is about our main character, Hallie, who fell hard for Julian when she was younger and a teenager, and then they had an almost kiss, and then Julian went away to university and she never saw him again, and yeah, now he's back. So Hallie's been given this job to tend to the garden at his family estate, and has no idea that he's back, and runs into him, and she's like, oh my god, he can't remember who she is. So he starts to kind of like, he's trying to figure out who she is, while also kind of falling for her, but also kind of hating her, because he is like, he has his routine down to the minute, and I mean obsessively so, like OCD level, currently in therapy. If he does not do exactly this, the world will end level. Like, that is how Julian is, and Hallie is pure living chaos. Like, everything is out of line with Hallie, and it's hilarious watching them together. But then Hallie decides one drunken night to leave him a note, like from a secret admirer, explaining what happened when they were younger. And Julian finds the letter, and they begin to write back and forth, and they are also getting to know each other anyway, so like it just adds this sort of layer onto it, and I love it. It doesn't do too much, but I really enjoyed like the conversations that were had about anxiety and about just this book. I really enjoyed this book. I cannot wait to read the next one because it's about his sister, and I love his sister. This book is so much more than just a romance, and not that just the romance is any kind of bad, but the conversations that this had, just, oh, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. I loved it, and I'm so happy with Tessa Bailey and how much she is improving with her writing. Like, she just keeps getting better. And finally, the last thing I read in the month of August, I almost said September again, was The Parish Library by Janet Skesline Charles. I put this book off all month. I pushed it to the bottom of the TBR pile, I ignored it, and on the last day of August, I read it, and I read it in one go because I was absolutely addicted to it. I loved this book. This follows our main character, Odile, and it kind of splits between Odile in 1939 in Paris, and Lily and Odile in Montana and in 1983. So Lily is a young girl who is the neighbour of Odile, and she asks Odile if she can write a paper about her about Paris during the war. And so Odile starts to kind of spend more time with her and tell her some of her story, but you're getting more of the backstory as well from Adele's point of view in 1939, where she starts a job as a librarian at the American Library in Paris, which is still there. You can still go and visit it. And the start of the Nazi occupation in Paris, so like the start of the war, the Nazi occupation that sweeps through Paris, and the things that the librarians do to try and protect the books, protect the other staff members, protect their subscribers, who are people that come in and use the library, some of whom are Jewish or Polish or Russian, you know, people who are undesirable to the Germans. And as the Nazis get closer, these people are put in more danger and society around them starts to fall apart, because it was a very, very difficult time. And you see this progression of Odele's life and her explaining it to Lily, while Lily's also having this issue as her mum ails and dies and she gets a new stepmom. And it's fantastic. It's so fantastically done. The fact that there's 2 stories in here and they're both very well fleshed out, and it's not even that long. It looks longer, but it's only about 420 pages. And they managed to seamlessly get both of these stories finished. And I was not expecting the ending. I really, really wasn't. And it really does lead you down this path, and then suddenly, like, ooh, I love this. This is a fantastic addition to my world of historical fiction, and I am kicking myself for putting it off, but you know, we live and we learn. So that is it. That is every book I read in September. August. That is every book I read in August. I really need to get all this down. Every book I read in August. And I'm actually really, really happy with my reading month. It got so many books. There were only 2 rereads in there. Only 2 rereads. So I got so many books off of my TBR. My TBR is still at 88 though, because birthday. But yeah, I'm so happy with my reading this month. I had such a good time with it. Yeah, there were DNFs. Yeah, there were duds. But overall, it's really, really positive. And just looking at all these new books and that I've read, I'm so, so chuffed. But yeah, I'm going to have to go now because I need to leave right now for my appointment. Otherwise, I'm going to be late. And I do not want to be late. So thank you very much for watching. I'm very sorry this is a week later than I expected it to be. But hey ho, COVID and getting my bathroom done really, really did a number on me. So you get what you get. If you have a problem, I'm sorry. But I don't really care that much. Yeah, so I will see you next video. If you want to leave me a emoji, leave me like a Parish related emoji for the Parish Library. So like the flag, if there's like a little Eiffel Tower, a little beret wearing person, any France, Paris related thing down in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!